Good evening, Titans, and welcome back. Seems like a long time since I've done one of these videos. So today we're going to be talking about multi-step inequalities and how to solve them. First of all, just remember the difference between inequalities and equations. Equations have an equal sign and only have a certain number of solutions usually. Inequalities have an inequality sign. It could be a less than, it could be a greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and they have an infinite number of solutions typically. So how do we solve inequalities? Well, we solve them just like we would solve an equation. We try to isolate the x just like in equations, but there are some considerations. We can add or subtract, or multiply, divide, the same thing to both sides. So if you look at the one-step equation over here, they subtracted 5 from both sides. We get n is greater than 5, so all numbers greater than 5 would make that true. Here it's a one-step equation. We're dividing both sides by 6. We get x is greater than or equal to 3, so the solution is all numbers greater than or equal to 3. Warning though, there's one major difference when solving inequalities and solving equations. It comes to when you have to multiply or divide to solve. And when you multiply or divide each side of an inequality by a negative number, you must reverse or flip the inequality symbol. And we'll look at some examples of this later. So, if we look at this, if I'm going to solve this first one here, and I have 3x is greater than or equal to negative, or greater than a negative 6, I would divide both sides by 3. Well, since I'm dividing by 3, I do not flip, so that's no flip. Here, to solve for y, I divide by a negative 2. Since I'm having to divide by a negative, I'd have to flip it. So in this case, I'd have 8 is greater than y, or we'd write it as y is less than 8. We always like to put the variable on the left side. Here, divide both sides by 5. Again, since I'm dividing by a positive number, I do not flip the sign, so I get negative 5 is greater than x. Or when I rewrite it, x is less than a negative 5. Now understand that when I rewrite it here and here, that's not the type of flip that we're talking about. The only time we're talking about the flip is when we're dividing by a negative. So here, divide both sides by a negative 5. Since I'm dividing by a negative, I have to flip the sign. So 15 divided by a negative 5 is a negative 3 is greater than x. But then remember, we'll write it so the variable's on the left is less than a negative 3. This last one, we divide by a negative 2. And again, since we're dividing by a negative, we are going to flip. So I have m is greater than a negative 5. And since the variable is already written on the left side, I don't have to rewrite it. So again, if you notice, it's when we multiply or divide by a negative that we flip the signs. When we divide by a positive, there is no flip. Now, solving inequalities is just like solving equations. So do you remember how to solve these equations? I hope so. Just a quick review, we'd subtract the 3 first. We'd have 4x is equal to 24 and divide by 4. And x is equal to 6. Here, subtract the 7 first. I get x divided by 3 is equal to a negative 3. Multiply both sides by 3. I get x is equal to a negative 9. That's just a quick review of solving two-step equations. So now, using that knowledge, try this one. Well, if you look at it, we have negative 4x plus 2 is greater than or equal to 18. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. And we get negative 4x is greater than or equal to 16. And now I have to divide by negative 4. But since we're dividing by a negative, I have to remember to flip the inequality sign. So now I get x is less than or equal to a negative 4. And then we graph it. And again, as Mr. Spilker talked about, since this is equal to, that's a solid circle at negative 4. And then we shade to the left because it's less than. And if we write the variable on the left side like we do here, the direction of the inequality sign will be the direction that will shade on our number line. Here's another example. Again, solving a two-step equation. We're going to solve by subtracting 1 from each side first, and then dividing by 4. And since we're dividing by a positive number, there's no need to reverse the sign, so I just get x is greater than 3. Again, since it's greater than, it's going to be open and shaded to the right, because the numbers that are greater than 3 are to the right on the number line. So, some steps. You may want to pause right now and write these down. But again, if you know how to solve equations, then really the only thing you have to make sure you remember is that part right there. All right? And then we always want to write the inequality so that the variable is on the left. So if it's x is greater than 5, that's how we like to have it written. So if my answer is, say, 3 is less than x, then I want to rewrite that so the x is on the left, the number's on that, and now I don't want to upset the alligator since the alligator's eating the x. I want to make sure that the alligator is still going to eat the x, and we want to write them like that. So now here's a multi-step equation. So if you remember multi-step equation, we distribute through first, so we have negative 3a plus 37 is equal to a negative 7 plus a negative 14a. Now we're going to change sides and change signs. So this becomes plus 14a over here, so that's 11a. This becomes a negative 37 over here, so that's a negative 44. Divide by 11. I get a is equal to a negative 4. Now, it's an equation. A is equal to a negative 4. If we were to graph it, that's all we would have, which is why we don't use number lines and graph the solutions to equations, because we're only graphing one point usually. Here's a multi-step inequality. So again, here, the extra steps that we have happen on the left side. We have to combine our like terms. So we have 10x and negative 4x. Remember, that's plus a negative. And that gives you my 6x. So now I have 6x plus 21 is less than a negative 15. Subtract the 21 and then divide. And since, again, I'm dividing by a positive number here, I don't reverse the sign. So I have x is less than negative 6. So it will be open and to the left. Now, here's an inequality. So we're going to distribute through first. So I get negative 24 plus a negative 4n is greater than or equal to a negative 10 minus 6n. Now I'm going to again use change sides, change signs. So that negative 6n becomes a plus 6n on this side. This negative 24 becomes a plus 24 on this side. And I get 2n is greater than or equal to 14. Then divide by 2. I get n is greater than or equal to 7. Well, now I'm ready to graph this. Since it's equal to, I have to put a closed circle at 7. And then greater than is to the right. We shade to the right. Now, when you're having to write inequalities, these are some of the key words you want to look for. So these are the words that would indicate a less than symbol. These are the words that would indicate a greater than symbol. Here are the words that would indicate less than or equal to. Now the tricky ones are these two right here, because no more than or at most, they use the words most and more, but they actually mean less than or equal to. So no more than or at most means less than or equal to. So for example, if I said you can be at most 19 years old to go to the teen dance club, then your age would have to be less than or equal to 19. Then you have the greater than or equal to. And so greater than or equal to, or no less than, sorry I missed the S there, and at least. And so, for example, is that you must be at least 16 years old to get your driver's license. So, again, your age must be greater than or equal to 16 years old. So that's at least. This one is at most. Now I'd like you to take this opportunity here, and you can pause this and solve each one of these and just see if you can match them up. And we'll reveal the answers to this matching activity tomorrow on our PowerPoint. So take this opportunity, and again, look, they're very similar, so solving them is not going to be the most difficult part, but you're going to have to remember when you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to reverse the sign. Remember, it's only when you multiply or divide by a negative, not when you add or subtract. All right, so great to be back, Titans, and look forward to going over this more tomorrow in class, but have a good evening.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.